Welcome back, 412-575-2600 on the Borders and Borders hotline. Before we get to that, let's go to the Xfinity Sports Desk. We'll talk about a few things here. First off, Pirates and Reds right now at Three River Stadium, at PNC Park, on a night when they honor Steve Blass in his last weekend. Of course, he's going to go into retirement after 60 seasons with the club, so they honored him this evening. He threw out the first pitch to his grandson, which was a touching moment at PNC. Also, those two teams still going right now. We'll give you an update here in just a moment on the score. Also, Tim, something that you and I just talked about here off the air, it sounds like there's going to be an announcement for a new Pirates Hall of Fame, I believe, or Pirates Hall of Honor, I believe it is. And I think that's actually a pretty interesting dynamic, and it sounds like Steve Blass is going to be part of that inaugural class for this Pirates Hall of Honor. Your thoughts on that, Tim?
Yeah, that's great that Steve is part of the inaugural class going in. Now, if they do it like the Baseball Hall of Fame and they do 5, I'm not saying they have to, but if they were to do it, who are the other 4 then? I'm not saying that Blass would have to be part of it, but especially if they're going to do somebody who's like a non-player every year. I don't know how they're going to do it exactly, but
that's not counting the posthumous ones too.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. If you were to put in the other 4 to me have to be Wagner, Kiner, Willie Stargell, and Clemente.
That's it. Those are the 5.
It's pretty open and shut, right?
I'm good with that.
So let's advance the argument then. If that's easy, and I think it is, at some point do they put Bonds in or not?
Ooh.
Now remember, he had 2 MVPs, gave them 3 of their only 6 playoff seasons since the We Are a Family team.
True.
3 of their only 7 above 500 seasons since that family team broke up in the 80s. So 89, I guess, is previous to that. So if that's the case, is Bonds then, especially since he wasn't on steroids when he was here, the only thing preventing you from putting Bonds in the Hall of Fame was how he acted and some of the things he said on the way out. Is that enough to have burned a bridge to the point that you don't induct him into something like this?
I think a lot of people's perspective about Barry Bonds as a Pirate, some of it is kind of jaded by his post-Pirates career. And they look at
some of the grousing he did while he was here and on the way out in his last season.
The infamous blow-up with Jim Leland at spring training, that comes to mind.
Yeah, and some of the things he said about the team and the city, after they let Bobby Bonilla go in 1991. So, but if you ask me who is the single most talented player to ever put on a Pirate uniform, it's Bonds. He's not the best Pirate, didn't have the best Pirate career. Those were the 4 guys I
teammate either.
No, those are the 4 guys I mentioned before, maybe a couple others. But as far as raw talent in a Pirate uniform, he's the best they've had.
To ultimately answer your question, I would put him in. I would put him in. And a lot of people probably would not like that. But just based on his Pirates career, and I have to remind people, before he went to San Francisco, he was still a really, really good player. He was still one of the best players in baseball, even before he left here at free agency. So for that reason alone, amongst other things that you laid out, I personally would want to put him in.
Yeah, I think...
I imagine other people would disagree for various reasons.
Especially in the post-Antonio Brown age in which we live.
Oh, boy.
I feel like from now on, all things will be compared to that, and that somehow mollifies the way Barry acted. Don't you think?
So he gets grandfathered in because he's pre-AB?
Yeah. Well,
I like this rule.
No. Actually, I'm
rule.
saying my feelings have changed post-AB is what I'm saying. Like, I used to harbor as much resentment against Bonds as everybody, but that didn't look like anything compared to what we just went through. By the way, has he ticked off anybody since we got? Who's he fighting with this? Lamar Jackson? Oh, no, he's got Lamar Jackson's back.
Let me pull up his Twitter page.
He doesn't like Eric Weddle, and he doesn't like Baker Mayfield.
Right now. Baker Mayfield fired back at him, too.
I saw that.
That was interesting. Go to Baker Mayfield. Let's go to the phone lines before we forget why we're here. Let's go to Steve in Johnstown. Steve, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call, Josh and Tim.
Yeah.
I just want the coaching decisions that the Steelers have been making. I just don't understand over the last several years, they have the same old playbook. They throw the ball across the line of scrimmage, and they never seem to get any yards that way. It was 3rd or 4th and 1. They're pitching out to the running back. He's going sideways. Why can't Roethlisberger, before he got hurt, obviously, why couldn't he run? Why couldn't they do a sneak for a yard? And they're trying all this stuff. They're getting caught in the backfield. And when I watched New England, I was up in New England a few weeks ago. They just dominate. They spread the field out, and they just seem to have the niche players. They don't have to have a superstar, but they just get the job done good.
Well, answer your,
fundamental
let's get to a couple of those points.
Yeah, 'cause that's a lot of stuff to break
You threw
down.
a lot of bunch of things out there, but
That isn't wrapped into one singular decision. That's a bunch of different decisions.
speaking of the New England game, what he said there about the quarterback sneak. Remember that play where Roethlisberger got up the line of scrimmage kind of close to the goal line? It was a 4th and goal. I think they called it. Was that the timeout before they decided to kick?
I think it was.
I actually tweeted out, did they have a trick play out there for that? And then they called it off. And somebody tweeted back at me and they said, no, it was a quarterback sneak. And I said, like I said, a trick play. He's right. They should run it. They should have that in their arsenal. I hate the sideways pitch. I hate the sideways throw down the line of scrimmage. And, Randy Fichtner put it more on Mason Rudolph this past week and said he's got to let it go when there are guys open. So maybe they'll let a fire into Rudolph and he'll uncork some deep. And that actually seems to be the most comfortable he is. He's just going up top right now.
To the caller's point, I think this was an interesting stat that was pointed out during the preseason. No quarterback had more passes behind the line of scrimmage last season than Ben Roethlisberger. He was also the shortest quarterback from snap to release last season as far as average release time. I think it was like 2.6 seconds. So a lot of it was designed for him to get the ball out quickly and allow guys to make plays in space.
Yeah, and I
now,
think
the problem is 2 of those guys that were good at making plays in space, they're now gone.
I'll give you 2 more of those fancy stats, too. Rudolph, I believe, was also the quarterback with the least amount of throws beyond the line of scrimmage or with beyond 5 yards from the line of scrimmage last week. And he was also the quarterback that threw into tight coverage more than any other quarterback last week at 49%, which indicates his receivers aren't exactly giving him a big window to throw into, or he's getting it there late.
Both good points. Both good points. Let's keep rolling. We will go to Tony in Cecil Township. This should be interesting. Tony, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Good evening, gentlemen.
How are you?
Thank you for taking my phone call. I was just wondering perhaps maybe if the Steelers are experiencing some hangover from the infantile behavior of Antonio Brown.
I don't think they're. No, they're not dealing with the hangover of his infantile behavior. They're dealing with his absence because he's really freaking good. That's what they're dealing with. They're dealing with not having Antonio Brown. Like, look, we can't blame all their failures last year on AB being a distraction and then blame their failures this year on the hangover of his distraction. They're dealing with the fact they don't have him anymore and they don't have anybody else good enough to be a number 1. And Juju is struggling in that capacity because he's seeing so much coverage, and there ain't no number 2 right now. And they got a number 2 quarterback. That's what they're struggling with.
Ain't many guys better against double coverage than AB. Tim's got a point. Got to take a break. We'll be right back.